Well, hello, everybody, and happy holidays from the Geary Stein Stevens Show. And we have got a gift for you tonight. We have such a great show. And again, once you find out who our guest is, you are not going to want to miss this show. And of course, I've got my co-host joining me from Duluth, Minnesota, Troy Geary. Happy holidays, my friend.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you, Dave. Nice and warm out up here in Minnesota, and looking for the show. I mean, I've been waiting for this show for a while. Met this guy a couple months ago, and just a great dude all around. It's not just as much as an actor he is too, but we'll get into that here in a minute.
Yeah, and I've got an introduction that is worthy of our guest tonight. So let me, without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest. What would you do if our guest on the show was an actor with a brilliant career? He starred on the stage and in TV and movies, and he was the dad on the Wonder Years. Oh, I tell you, Dan Lauria is great. Oh, he's sorry. Dan Lauria is dead tonight. So, yeah, we'll talk about his career and everything else. All right, that's all I got. That's about as much Joe Cocker I have. And Dan Lauria is joining us tonight. I don't know if you've ever had an introduction like that before, but it is great to have you here joining us. And Dan, man, we have so much to talk about, so much to cover, but welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays, happy Kwanzaa, happy Hanukkah coming up. So we are going to delve into so much, Dan Lauria, tonight, almost a kind of a This Is Your Life. But I want to let people know, the old and the young. We'd like to introduce you to who Dan Lauria is and what he did on Wonder Years.
Dad? When did you decide you wanted to become a manager of distribution and product support services?
I'm sorry. It's just a funny sort of a thought. Really wanting to be the manager of distribution and product support services. I mean, it's a good job, but it's not what I thought I'd be doing with my life.
What did you want to do?
What, are you kidding? Professional baseball player.
No, really.
Really? Well, I did have a fallback position.
This job?
No, not this job. I never told anybody this before, not even your mother. When I was your age, I wanted to be a captain of a ship.
The captain of a ship?
Yeah, you know, one of those big old...
So that is a look at just a brilliant show from back in the day. And Dan, what are your memories? I mean, do you still watch those shows? Are you in a hotel somewhere sometimes where you see them and you just watch an episode?
I'm one of those actors. I don't like to watch myself. I'm criticizing what I did just then. So I've seen the episodes I'm not in, but I don't really watch the ones I'm in. So, but what I remember most was... you know, we worked very hard. You got to remember, whenever you see a close-up of me, like even in that scene, Fred's not there. He's in school. I'm talking to an ex on a chair. So the concentration you have to have. And I loved that part of it. And the other part was we had a really nice show. We all get along. We're still in touch with each other. You know, the last play I did, they all came up to see it. So... matter of fact, I'm going to see Josh Saviano over the weekend. I just talked to Danica. She was on a call in. So, yeah, it was a good time. And, of course, it was the best written show on television at that time. So,
Troy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to ask you about, I mean, it was a nice run with the Wonder Years, but can you give us, the people that don't know, the story about how that ended? I know there was supposed to be another season. And what happened there?
Oh yeah, we were.
You guys won a Golden Globe. I mean, you guys were big.
We won the Emmy for Best Show. Matter of fact, they changed the rules on the Emmys. We won after 6 on the air, and about 2 years later, they changed the rules. You had to have 12 on the air to be nominated. So, but we always won the best writing one, and it was just a good show. And we were, they moved our night, but we were 27 out of 166 shows, and we got canceled. So it's not a nice story. It's one of those, executive decisions that the actors had nothing to do with. But I remember Bob Rush, our head writer, coming down on the second to the last show saying, we're got to rewrite. We're going to do a 2-parter because we got canceled. And everybody cried. We were just in shock. We couldn't believe it because we wanted it to end. It was always written with the intention of ending the day Fred gets accepted to college, and he comes home and he finds me dead on the living room floor. Because Neil Marlins, who wrote it, his father died when he was young while they were playing tennis. And that was the end of the Wonder Years for him. So it was very powerful. Everything you hear in that last voiceover on the last show, that's what you would have seen if we had come back for 12 more. So.
And now with all these reboots and everything that they talk about, there's not even a chance for you to come back unless they do some sort of Dallas type thing where you didn't exist.
Well, I don't know. There was talk about it. I know Bob Rush and I don't know if Neil Marlins had the idea of bringing it back where Fred is married now with 3 kids, and the mother has gone on and got remarried. But during the show, he goes out in the backyard and looks through a telescope, and I'm there on a swing like a ghost, saying, see, you thought I was a jerk. You're doing the same thing I did, So I think it would have worked fine. But I don't know. They don't look at it that way. They're going the reboot they did with Dulé Hill, who's a good friend of mine. When they stuck to our formula, they did fine. But like Dulé said, they kept pushing it to be more of a sitcom. And you got to be one or the other. You can't be fish or fowl,
Well, you guys became a legitimate family. I mean, as you mentioned, you've stayed in touch with them over the years. I mean, how did that closeness develop so quick? That chemistry seemed to be there right from almost day one.
Well, a lot of it had to do with Fred. He, I think about the 3rd show in, he missed a day because of, I think he had the flu or something. Anyway, when he came back, he realized we didn't work. We couldn't do very much without him. He never missed another day during the entire 6 years, unless it was a school thing that had to be, that we didn't have a choice. So, and the parents of the kids were great. And of course, we had me and Allie, the old timers, Matter of fact, the first day on the pilot, they said, anything you can do to help the kid, we'd appreciate. And I did one scene with Fred, and I yelled out to the crew, don't anybody give this kid any lessons about anything. I said, Fred, you could be the next Jack Lemmon if you want. Of course, he said, who's Jack Lemmon? And I made him about 10 movies. But I told him, you only have to know one thing, Fred. If it feels good, it's fine. If it doesn't, you're the star. Ask for another take. We're all here for you, And he was great. I know he's a great director, but I just wish he had stayed with acting. I did his first professional play with him at Westport, Connecticut, and
really?
He was terrific. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, the demise of the show, though, is pointed to pretty much one person. And I know you've talked about this before, but for our listeners who wonders, how did that go about?
Well, Ronald Perlman, not Ron Perlman, the actor, who was my dear friend, but Ronald Perlman, who owned Revlon. He bought the rights to the show, and he bought the company that made the show, and he sold off everything the company had, like Sledgehammer and a lot of those other shows, Zorro. But the real money maker was the Wonder Years. And Bob Iger, who was president of ABC, he said, even if I stayed there, Dan, I couldn't have stayed the Wonder Years. He was impossible to deal with. and he sold the rights to Ted Turner, and he tried to make it, or somebody in his office tried to make it look like Ted Turner was the reason why we were canceled. And Ted Turner, who never did any public speaking, he came out right away, went right on the air and said, look, I offered to buy 100 more. I'll buy every one they make. And then Ronald Perlman, and this is an exact quote, the amount of profit did not warrant another season.
That is just crazy.
I mean, you can edit this out, but I'm telling you now, if the two of us are ever in a room together, only one of us is coming out. And I wouldn't bet on him.
No, I wouldn't bet on him either. I've seen you in action, so
yeah.
Oh man, yeah. All these years later, we still see it on all the reruns. I mean, so does Ted? Does he own the I guess
subsidiary rights, like when it goes?
Okay.
But there was a screw up on the music, on the rights for the music, and that's why it's not shown. I don't know if you'll notice this, but whenever anybody starts a new streaming channel, they always start with the Wonder Years, but you don't see them bring it back that often because it costs too much for the rights of the music. So
that is poor R.I.P. Joe Cocker from that. What made them decide to go with that song? Do you know anything behind the song and the music?
Yeah, that's a great story. We're the only show that had a song. And the story I got from our producer, Ken Topolsky, great guy, they sent a copy of the pilot. Somehow they got it to Paul McCartney with the Beatles singing it. And Paul McCartney actually got back to him and said, I love this pilot, but we don't own the rights anymore. The Beatles didn't own it. He said, but let me see what I could do. And, the way Ken told me, he said, we thought we'd never hear from him again. And a few days later, he got back and said, listen, they're going to let you use our song, but you can't use our version of it. And I've asked a friend if he would be willing to do it because he sings it in his act. And it was Joe Cocker. I'd never met Paul McCartney. If I do, I would just love to find out how accurate that story is and thank him,
That is great. There
hasn't been another show with a Beatles song.
Yeah, we haven't, and probably won't be again. But wow, so many great stories, and we've got so many more coming up. We're going to pay a couple of bills. Don't go away. We are sitting with a legendary actor on Broadway and movies and television and Love Boat and Murder, She Wrote. Were you ever on Murder, She Wrote?
No, that's one I didn't do. I would
okay.
love to work with Angela.
All right, so many different ones, but don't go away. We're spending a little time with Dan Lauria. We got a lot still ahead. We got to touch on where he came from in Connecticut, how he got into acting, and of course, his coaching in Major League Baseball and in the NFL. So don't go away. You're watching Geary Stein Stevens, a special holiday edition. Ho, ho, ho. Don't go away.
Serendipity Yacht Cruises and Events wants you to come party with us. We're bringing the fun to the Houston Bay Area. Stay tuned for all of our incredible events throughout the year, featuring amazing food and drinks, live entertainment, special guests, and so much more. Fun, new, different. Serendipity Yacht Cruises and Events is where you want to be. So come party with us. It's more than a yacht. It's serendipity.
Hi, this is Kathy Ireland. So excited to share with you today our incredible Kathy Ireland Nutrition Supplement Powders by Amoxi. We have a beautiful array of powders to help you live a happier, healthier lifestyle. Our focus is on bringing families a nutritious option to complement your daily routine. With Collagen Plus, you'll see improvements in your hair, nails, joints, and bones, as well as skin elasticity and hydration. Immunity Support uses our proprietary green blends, antioxidant powder, and digestive support fiber to give your immune system a powerful boost. Golden oat milk is dairy-free and uses a recipe of turmeric and ginger, coconut milk, and our mushroom blend to give you more of an energy boost without the crash of coffee. And with Super Greens, we have a probiotic and digestive enzyme blend along with fruits, veggies, and 9 types of greens to help support healthy gut. Please experience the difference of Amoxi supplements. Let's get healthier together. Thank you.
All right. Hey, Dan, I just want to ask you the story about how you got started in acting. I know you were in college and you're a football player, and how you almost actually went to University of Iowa as a grad assistant, but you decided to go into acting. Tell us about how you got your start and about that story.
I was literally telling a joke on the football field before practice, and a little old lady came up, tapped me with her cane on my shoulder pad and said, "Would you like to be in a play?" And I said, "I've always wanted to do that. I always liked old movies." And she said, "I know." And I said, "How would you know?" And she said, "Because I'm the greatest acting teacher in the world." And it was Constance Welsh. She had started the Yale Dramont, and now she was down the road at Southern Connecticut. And she needed a big, ugly guy to be Caliban in The Tempest. And actually, she brought me to a student production first. And, I said, "This beats working." And then after I got out of the service, I said, well, if the Marine Corps didn't kill me, acting won't. So I just stayed with it. I liked it from the moment I was on stage. And the only reason why I chose acting over coaching was because as a coach, you're on the sidelines. And acting, you're still in the game, no matter how old.
Yeah. Do you remember your first paid gig that you had?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I was still at college, and somebody, they were doing the Seagull at Long Wharf, and Constance Welsh knew Arvin Brown, who was running it, and said, "Hey, I got a guy. He's crazy enough to try to memorize the lines in 1 or 2 days." So I went on, and that was actually got paid. Then I went into service, and I had to get my union card all over again. So, I guess once I came to New York, the first paying gig was on soap operas. Most of the actors who came to New York in those times, you either did a commercial or you worked on soap operas.
And you had a legendary mentor, too, that we were talking about earlier. I was just kind of blown away. So how did that come about? I mean, again, our older listeners and viewers are going to be like, "Oh, I know that name." And so introduce them to our younger ones.
Yeah, if they see the face, they'll know Charles Durning was, from day one. He was a vet, and I was in a group called VECO. We were all Vietnam veterans, and he came over and started yelling at us, saying, "We got to change the name to the Veterans Ensemble Theater, not Vietnam vet. I'm a World War II vet." And of course, we changed the name, and he brought us to Joe Papp. And true story, I was Charles Durning saw everything I ever did. And after I would do a performance, he'd put his arm around me and go, "All right, another 20 years, you'll be an actor." And I said, "All right, Charles." And, we were very close. We'd go to dinner all the time in LA. It was Charles Durning, Jack Klugman, Peter Falk, Dom DeLuise, and myself. And sometimes I'd bring a young writer just so I could hear the same stories over again, But when Charlie died, I literally was in the hospital room with him. And I went over to the theater. I was doing A Christmas Story on Broadway. And I knew if I missed a performance, Charlie would have come back from the dead and killed me. So I went over, and I called Jack Klugman and let him know. And as I flipped open my phone back then, it rang and it said Jack Klugman. So I didn't say hello. I just said, "How did you know?" And Jack's wife, Peggy, said, "Know what, Dan?" I said, "I was just calling you and Jack to tell you that Charles Durning passed away." And I heard her drop the phone on the floor. She picked it up and she said, "I was calling you to let you know Jack passed away." They passed away 4 hours apart on Christmas Eve.
Wow.
And I called Paul Lieber, who handles a lot of the Broadway PR. And I said, Paul, it hasn't even hit the papers, but both Charles Durning and Jack Klugman have passed away. Is there any chance we could dim the lights one night on Broadway for the two of them? And I'll never forget, there was a long pause. And then Paul said, no, we're going to dim them 2 nights in a row. And it was the only time in the history of Broadway that the lights were dimmed 2 nights in a row for actors. So,
wow.
But they were a different breed, you know.
Also, another iconic person back in the day, and still is Frank Sinatra. And you had a unique friendship with him. Kind of tell us about how that started.
Well, it really started with Tommy Dreesen, who opened for Frank for 17 years. He was very close to Joe Mantegna and Dennis Farina, and of course they were my friends. So we would go to the Frank Sinatra golf tournament. Matter of fact, I was telling Dave before, the night before the tournament, we would get there and we would go to dinner. It would be Lee Mazzilli, Joe Torre, Yogi Berra, Dennis Farina, Joe Mantegna, and myself, and laugh. Oh, we had such great times. But I had done a favor for a friend, and I brought it to the tournament, and Frank found out about it, and he said, from now on, you're my friend. And he said, if you ever come to Palm Springs and don't stop at the house, I'll be very upset with you. I laughed. I said, you know, and I would go down to visit the Barbara Sinatra Center. It was for abused kids, and I knew they watched the Wonder Years, you know. And I went down about 3 or 4 times. And then like the 5th time I went, I get a call from Frank Sinatra. Hey, he called me Jarhead because I'm a Marine. He had nicknames for everybody. He said, hey, Jarhead, you were here? You didn't stop by? I said, oh, I didn't know you were in town, you know. He said, I don't care. You stop by. Boy, every time I went down after that, I'd stop at the house, knock, and usually he wasn't there. And I'd say, just let him know Jarhead stopped by and all mad at me. And then finally one day I knocked and, hey, Jarhead, come on in. You know, I stayed like 10 minutes. And I get ready to go. And I say, I don't want to take up your time. He goes, I'll throw you out when I'm done. 3 or 4 hours. And it was the only time I really got to talk to him about acting, because at the tournament it was always about singing and performing, you know. And he was, you know, he was in his 80s and still doing his scales as a singer. And he loved talking about acting, you know. He was a consummate artist. And, you know, you hear horror stories. I never saw any of that. But like Tommy Dreesen said, if Frank says you're his friend, you will never have a better friend. But you don't want him as an enemy.
Yeah. And Dan, you just dropped all these names, and I'm sitting here. I mean, did you ever just look around in those moments and go, I'm Dan Lauria. Do I belong here? And pinching yourself thinking like, you know.
Every minute. I mean, we had a card game. And I can show you some of the pictures. If you got a straight flush, we would stop and take a picture. And well, the one with Charles Durning, in that picture is me, Sid Caesar, Joe Bologna, Rod Steiger, Tom Poston, and who I forget who else now is in there. And then Charlie got me involved with the National Veterans Foundation, and I'm still on the board, but there's photos with Jimmy Stewart and Cesar Romero and Robert Mitchum. And, you know, I got to meet all of them. And a lot of it had to do with, after the Wonder Years, I produced a couple of plays. One of them was A Bronx Tale. And De Niro's company bought it from us. But I didn't want to keep doing that. But Charlie made me start a reading series where every Monday night we read a new play to help writers get literary agents. And it caught on. So you wouldn't believe the stars who read. And we did one a week for 9 years. And everybody read. Like Tom Hanks never actually read, but he directed the 3 that Rita, his wife, was in. And we had one play about 4 old gay men who meet at Thanksgiving. It was called Thanksgiving. And my 4 old gay men were Charles Durning, Rod Steiger, Jack Palance, and Robert Mitchum.
Wow.
The worst rehearsal in 9 years.
Oh, man. That would have been a heck of a movie. Wow.
Oh, they didn't want to rehearse, but the reading, you would have thought they rehearsed for 10 years. They were such pros. You know?
Now, Dan, you've touched on your military career, obviously kind of sidetracking you a little bit, but, you did serve 3 years. You made it as a captain. And
I was captain. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what that was like. And, that actually had some influence on your acting career. And then you got to be in, I think it was Independence Day, where, again, you get to play a big military leader. But how much of your military helped you as far as being an actor, being organized, maybe, paying attention more?
Yeah, all that stuff. I mean, I'm always glad when people bring it up because, Hollywood has a way of making it sound like you were a war hero or anything. We had orders to go to Vietnam. They stopped us at Okinawa because they were pulling out all the Marines. And we would float off the coast, get ready. And that's why technically I am a Vietnam vet, because we were in hostile waters. And then at the very end, I went in to teach South Vietnamese to call in airstrikes because our Marine planes were still flying in from Thailand. But as soon as they found out we were there, an order came, get those Marines out. And I'm speculating, but I got a feeling they didn't want the public back here to think they were redeploying Marines in. So I was there for, a few 2 weeks. And the people I served with, though, my company commander overseas was, he was Captain Carlton Fulford, who became 4-star General Fulton, in charge of all Marines in Desert Storm. He still comes to my plays. My first sergeant came till he passed away recently. My platoon sergeant, Dave Schmidt, I still keep in touch with him. And, you learn loyalty and you learn, especially when you're on stage, it's not just your performance, it's everybody's there. I hate selfish actors. I really wish they would have spent a few years in the Corps. They would have learned their lesson real quick.
Well, you've worked with a lot of heavy hitters over the year. I mean, some good, some bad. I mean, do you take a little of those experiences knowing, okay, when you're going to go against an actor who has a bad reputation or an actor that's, stays in the role and goes to the food line and he's still Abraham Lincoln or something like that? I mean, there's so much diversity. So what do you pick and choose?
Yeah, I don't like to talk about the negative ones because for a simple reason, I never learned anything from them. I mean, anybody can be selfish, but the people I work with, like Charlie Durning and Jack Klugman, I mean, to be on stage with Peter Falk, every moment was a learning. And when you hang with them and talk with them, it was never about, oh, that performance was good or this performance was bad. It was always about choices. Oh, I like that choice. Oh, why did you pick that? Why didn't you laugh there? And they wanted to know why. And you learn from each other. But the selfish ones, like I did Earth to the Moon with, I didn't get to act with Tom Hanks, but he directed the 2 episodes I was in. And you hear all these stories about how nice he is. And in real life, he's even nicer. He made it so much, I'm meeting Tom Hanks and, I think the only reason why I got the part was I looked like the guy I was playing. And he liked my work and he went out of the way. He said, Dan, I can print every take of yours, and I, naturally I kidded him and I said, well, go to the stage. You'll be able to print every one of your takes too, and he just laughed. And, and I was good friends with Peter Scolari, and Peter would stay at my house in LA when he came out there. And
his old bosom buddy castmate.
Oh yeah. They were very close. But I'll give you a good Tom Hanks story. We're working on Earth to the Moon. I told him I'm on the National Veterans Foundation. I said, can I get a couple of posters with Band of Brothers or something signed? Because we have an auction every year. And he gave me the number of his secretary. He said, when this is over and you get back to LA, call my secretary. So I did. And she said, oh, we send the truck over. I said, what do you mean? He said, he signed about 50 things. We actually had to have a van go over for all the things he signed. And then the next year I called, she said, yeah, he said, come over every year. So the National Veterans Foundation always had things to auction from Tom Hanks. Yeah, and you don't hear those stories. You hear bad stories.
No, and it's great that you bring that up because, again, thank you for your service, but you continue to serve the veterans, and you have over the years. And, Troy and I have worked with various organizations, and we don't do enough, especially times like this, that we're not, we need you guys to come home and feel appreciated. And I don't think you got that when you came home during your first tour. So thank you so much.
Wow, my honor.
All right, and we talked about the stage, so the stage has been set. When we come back, we're going to talk about some amazing things that he has done on Broadway, what he's doing now, and what the future holds. So don't go away. You're watching a very special edition with Dave, Troy, and Dan Lauria. Don't go away.
Just can't shake this loneliness.
Am I drinking too much?
Are these mood changes normal? You don't need to answer these questions alone. Easter Seals wants to make sure you have the mental health support you need. So anonymous mental health screening tool. We're sharing this so you can better understand your needs and work toward the life you want to lead with support all along the way. Understand your needs and get the right support for you. Take the free screening now at easterseals.com/mentalhealth.
Hi, this is Charlie in the Box. Welcome back to the Geary Stein Stevens Show. And now the biggest misfit of them all, Dave Stevens. All right, thank you, Land of the Misfit Toys. All right, that goes there. But we are back for the last part of the Geary Stein Stevens Show, and we talked about Dan doing so many things, Broadway, big screen, everything, but he has done something that the sports world loved, and in fact, it took him to the big screen at the Super Bowl. Check this out.
Gentlemen, this is the moment you've been waiting for since you came to Green Bay in July. You have made it to Super Bowl 45, but getting to the Super Bowl is not enough. It's been 14 seasons since you've won the trophy. The time is now. You dealt with adversity throughout the season. 16 players on injured reserve, but you pulled together. Team. No one man bigger than any of the others. It did not matter where you played the game. 3 opposing stadiums in the playoffs, and you won. Roger, you've had a great year, but you know it's about championships. So go get one, son. You cannot be satisfied with just playing the game. You have to taste the win, want to win, and above all else, have the will to win. You are the Packers. Go do it.
Yeah, that's iconic Vince Lombardi. Let's talk about, I know there was some politics involved to start, but how did you get the role of Vince Lombardi? And, in the NFL basically said, we want you.
Well, again, personal contact has more to do with anything. Years ago, I met 2 young kids that were working on a play in the basement of the bookstore. And I brought my agent to see them, and my agent said, the director looks like Clarabelle with dark hair, and the Puerto Rican kid doesn't sing that well. I said, screw them. And I gave him my New York apartment, and, well, it was Tommy Kail and Lin-Manuel Miranda. Shows you what they know, right?
Wow.
So they asked Tommy Kail to direct Lombardi, and they didn't want me because they wanted a movie star. They wanted Martin Sheen, who said, I'm way too old for this. I can't do 8 of these. And there was somebody else they had in mind. I forget who. But Tommy said, look, Dan's crazy. He'll come in for me and do the first reading at a table. And I came in, and David Marinis, who wrote the book it was based on, and Eric Simonson, who wrote the play, they said to the producers, we want him. He looks like Lombardi. He knows football. He's not acting, And then they finally had a backers audition. And I came in again with no guarantee, but the NFL was there and Roger Goodell was there. And after they heard me read, they went to the producers and said, we'll help you all we can, but he's got to play Lombardi. So then they went into casting. And Tommy asked me for some suggestions. And literally the first person I recommended for the wife was Judith Light, because we had worked together on One Life to Live. And of course, Judith is, she got nominated and she's won 2 Tony Awards since. And It was fun. I love the interviews because on One Life to Live, I played Gus the Killer Pimp. I was her pimp. So when they would say, "How did you meet Judith?" I said, "Well, I was her pimp," and she'd say, "Finish the sentence." He's talking about on One Life to Live, but it was a great combo. But we, it's a little bit of a negative story in that we were not accepted by the Broadway community. We were the longest running straight play, new play. And other than Judith, we didn't get one nomination, not for Tommy. And we were the only show that was making money on Broadway. And it was a shame because Tommy and I thought we were bringing in a new audience. We were bringing in those truck drivers who would never go to a play, but they would come see Lombardi. And I always said it's because of Judith that we ran that long, because it was their wives going home, calling the other wives saying, it's the one play your husband will want to see, but it's really about the family. And Judith, she was terrific. Every night we'd hear women in the audience going, "You're just like that. You're just like that."
You guys really made those roles. That's why they came to life. And that's why I wonder if there's kind of like, how they have that in Hollywood, a good comedy can never win an Oscar. They're never going to let a comedy win an Oscar. And is there kind of like a sports Broadway play is never going to win a Tony? Do you think there's something to that?
There was something at that time. I hope it's not still true, but there was something about blue collar. If it's we were just a blue collar play. There was one critic who came. He didn't say much about the play, but he kept criticizing the audience. He came more than once. What are these people doing with Packer jerseys on in the audience? And I sat behind somebody who actually had a helmet on. And there was some of that, but they were the most respectful audience in the world. Matter of fact, they had somebody else would have to laugh first for them to laugh, because they didn't want to be. They thought it could be rude. You don't laugh at Coach Lombardi. So, but it was great. And every Thursday night there was a Packer there who would do a talk back afterwards, and they were great. It was great to. An old jock like me to be able to, call a Mara family and say, "Can I speak to Bart Starr?" And 10 minutes later, Bart Starr is on the phone. What do you need, Coach? And I would always ask the same question: what do you want to see that's not in the books? And more than half said Lombardi's sense of humor. So we all know about the screaming and the yelling. He said, but he was the worst at telling a joke. We actually put something about that in the play. But Fuzzy Thurston would always tell him a joke on Monday. And on Friday, when he lightened up a little bit, usually Bart Starr or somebody say, "Hey, Coach, I heard you got a new joke." And then he'd screw up the joke, but he'd have a big laugh about it,
How much did you work on the mannerisms? Again, it's bizarre how perfect you are as that role, and you had the mannerisms and what the hell's going on, all those kind of things. So how long did it take you to become Lombardi?
Well, not very long, because he was my favorite coach anyway. And I had all the footage, too much footage. I would waste a lot of time watching things I didn't really need to watch just because he was in there and his speeches. And you showed that photo of Yogi before. One night, Yogi came, and sitting to one side of him was Frank Thomas, and on the other side was Hank Aaron. And in the opening, the play opens with the actual speech Lombardi gave to the Packers when he first went there. And you used the audience, because it was in the round, as if they were the team. And in the speech, I looked right at Yogi, and as part of the speech, it says, "We're going to be the Yankees of professional football." And Yogi just went nuts. He clapped. And afterwards, they came backstage, and Hank Aaron, great guy, he puts his arm around me and goes, "Thank God you didn't say Yankees again. Yogi would have killed us. He was and Yogi knew him well, because in the offseason, he would go work out with the Giants when Lombardi was the offensive coordinator.
What a legend Yogi was. What a great story.
Oh, great guy.
I want to kind of follow up on that, Dan.
Let me give you a yogiism that's not in the books. We're at the Frank Sinatra tournament. We're ready to play golf. And Lee Mazzilli and I are on the putting green before we teed off. And Yogi's putting at the same hole, but he's like 25 feet away. And he hits 3 balls up. Nothing's close. And he says, hey, Dan, hit him back. I said, yo, why don't you practice the 5-footers? And he said, I'm never that close.
Wow, that's a great one. I kind of want to follow up on that with, the Lombardi thing, but you've done a lot of roles that you're playing a fictional character. How much does you see right now? Like, I don't see a lot of method acting anymore. And you like I said, you were really good at it with Lombardi. You dug into it, Tip O'Neill and Reagan. What do you think about that?
Well, you don't see much acting now at all because of all the mass editing. I was telling Dave before Oppenheimer won Best Editing, the longest take with 2 actors in the same frame talking to each other is 12 seconds.
Wow.
That's not editing. That's not directing. That's not acting. I haven't seen anybody listen on screen in years. Some of the independents, but again, they have a hard time getting things distributed, So like Charlie Durning would say, which our union never understood, it's not about money. It never was. Even in silent movies, it's not about money. They got all the money in the world. It's about power. And now with the mass editing, they own the editing machine. It's no longer a director sits with an editor, works out the pacing of the film and all that stuff. And it's why I honestly feel it's much harder for younger people today than it was when I started. All I had to do was learn how to act. They have to learn how to, be on a Facebook and have how many hits. And it's very little self-tapes. That's the worst thing that could happen to an actor. But it's hard to convince young people of that because they've come out of college never having done a play, but making 10-minute movies. I loved Charles Durning taught me right away. You never audition. You got 5 minutes to act. He said, don't waste your time looking at who else is there. He goes, who's there when I auditioned? The greatest actors in the business. Dolph Sweet and Kenny McMillan. They were all Charlie's peers. And he said, I'm telling you right now, every one of them gave a damn good audition on every audition they ever went. But so did I. But these young kids, they just do a tape. They don't like it. They redo it. They send it in. They don't get to meet anybody. There's no personal contact. That's why most of the movies I'm seeing seem very cold.
And do you think AI is going to make that worse?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I'm glad I'm old. You're going to have to deal with that.
Oh, no, I'm old school. I like the old stuff. Like you were talking about, you actually had to act.
No way of stopping. Matter of fact, do yourself a favor. When this is over, Google Playhouse 90 Project Immortality with Lee J. Cobb, Michael Landon before the Bonanza, my friend Patty McCormick. 1959. It's about AI.
Wow.
And well, you've lived how it was and where we've gone to.
And you play these roles that are real life people. And I want to bring up a show that I thought was kind of ahead of its time when you were on Pitch, where you were the manager of the first major league female professional pitcher. And again, Major League Baseball embraced it. It had a great story. Also, it was appealing to little girls that would want to do that. So talk a little bit about what that show was like. Ahead of its time, but still a great show.
Oh, yeah. It was created by Dan Fogelman, who created This Is Us, and now has Murder in the Building. And we loved the show. And our ratings were better each week. We actually got into Thursday night football audience. We could feel the wives out there saying, you can catch the second half of the game. I'm watching Pitch, and we were shocked when they didn't bring us back. I still think it's because Hillary didn't win. And Dan disagreed with me, but a couple of years later, he said, I don't know, same stockholders. Maybe you're right. So. And
you had the blessing of Major League Baseball. The Padres were working. I mean, was there a point you kind of just felt like you were actually managing the Padres? You had Paul Michael Gosselaar. You had everybody there.
Yeah. No, it never gets to that point where you really think, like Joe Montaigne said, the three best jobs in the world are a professional athlete, an astronaut, and an actor. And of the three, the best is an actor because you can play the other two. So, it's as close as I got to act. I always wanted to be a coach. So the closest I ever get is being a wrestling coach on Party of Five, or baseball coach on pitch, or Lombardi on Broadway, So,
well, such a great career. I mean, we could talk about what This Is Us was like. I mean, you seem to always, still continuing to go at your golden age. I mean,
until self-tapes came. That killed it for me.
So you're working on a play. Tell us a little bit about that and where we can see you and watch you and those kind of things.
Well, you saw it, right? It was a play called Just Another Day, and it was about Patty McCormick and I. We were two old comedy writers who now have dementia. So each day we meet at a bench, we write comedy, and we fall in love. And that's the whole play. See, you don't even have to go see it. I just told you.
No, we definitely have to go see it.
And it's easy. You can forget your lines, right?
Right. Nobody would know. No, but Patty wasn't she great in that play? And she's 80, and she memorized. That's a hard play. That's a two-hander, boy. So one night on stage and during a preview, she went downstage when she wasn't supposed to, and I was wondering what she'd do. And then she turned up stage so the audience couldn't see her face, and she said, "Where the hell are we?" So I said a couple of her lines and a couple of my lines, and she went, "Oh," and then she jumped back in, So.
Yeah, I have a few left, Dan. I just want to ask you, I mean, you've been a long time, have given back to the community. You started the Big Brothers. We've done stuff together for your New York Fire Department on 9/11. Why do you keep going back every year and, giving back? And I mean, I know the answer, but I just want to hear it from you.
Well, I think if you're going to be any kind of celebrity and you don't use it to help anybody else, that karma is going to catch up to you. 1972, while I was in the Marine Corps, I was the National Big Brother of the Year. And my godson now is my fifth little brother. It's the reason why I'm broke, keep paying for their education, And 9/11 hit, and I'm a New Yorker and I'm a Marine. So I went every Tuesday. They gave me a golf cart. I would go right down in a hole and give the firemen coffee and water. And then Wendy Malick and I did the play The Guys about the firemen that died on 9/11. We toured the country raising money for local fire departments, But that's all from Charlie and Jack. And, you do what you can to keep things like that healthy. And I'll tell you, the Big Brothers, it's the best program in the world. Although I got to tell you, they lie to you. They say you only have to see your little brother 2 hours every other week. Bullshit. That ain't ever going to happen.
No, not you.
You adopt them. They borrow your car. My first little brother, Glenn Wade, he just retired. I got him a job on the Wonder Years as a grip, and he's got 30 years in, and he's retired now.
Wow. One last for you. All the things you've done, what are you most proud of?
The next one.
The next one. That's a great answer.
That's a great answer.
I'll look back.
And all these cities, as we leave you, since we are a sports show, all these cities do you still bleed Giants blue, or do you have to be a Packer fan, or, do you like the Padres now? Like, tell us a little bit about who you have to watch now.
He's a Yankee fan. I know that.
Always a Giant first, but this year it's been real tough. But ever since playing Lombardi, it's the last time they won the Super Bowl was when Lombardi was on Broadway. So I'm pulling for them, and they have a good chance this year because of the injuries that Detroit has. They may pull it off again this year. That's a tough division, huh?
Oh, it's a tough season. I mean, the Lions were out of the gate, and then they're shut down. Now the Phillies resurging. Baltimore is a scary team that you don't want to play with that quarterback. I mean, it's an exciting year. I mean, it's exciting all around with the college football playoffs. I don't even know if you're into college football. I know Southern Connecticut State University didn't get to an FBS game, but they're battling Central Connecticut and all these schools up here,
It was fun though. I could have went to a bigger school, but I wouldn't have played as much. I'd rather, at Southern, I got to play all the time. So
I think it turned out for the best. So, but again, Dan, it has been great, and we are so excited that you joined us. I can't wait for the world to see our Christmas gift to everyone. Any closing thoughts, holiday thoughts you want to give out to the world?
Just go out of your way next year to be kind. That's it.
That's a pretty great philosophy. I think we could all learn from that.
Oh, yeah. One more time. What are those shows you're going to be doing in New Jersey? When do they start?
Well, I don't have a date yet, but it's going to be at the New Jersey Rep. I'll let you know, though. Maybe
Okay, let us know. We'll come to one. We'll promote it. I mean, it's definitely.
And in the month of June, Wendy Malick and I started a Durango Play Fest, so I'll be there the first week of June, and then we'll be in Big Bear doing my play with Patty. Yes, so that's in June.
Wow,
awesome.
We just got told yesterday we were published, so we're very happy about it.
Final question: how long are you going to do this?
Well, actors never retire. They just drag us out and throw us in the dumpster when it's over. We don't retire.
Well, then you can play a body on CSI, right?
Yeah, let me tell you something. Jack Klugman and Charlie Durning did a play together, something I found for them. Jack was 87 and Charlie was 86. And when they died, they were, like I told you, they died on the same day. They were 90 and 89. And they were still talking about acting.
Wow.
Yeah, someday I'll get it right. Charlie said, we got a little more time. I'll give you another.
You can take lessons from
her. Hey, we don't get you that often. So, yeah, the floor is yours. If we still have an audience, the floor is yours.
Well, like I told you, Charlie Durning would always see what I did, and he always say, another 20 years you'll be an actor. So I'm doing a new play with Jack Klugman called The Value of Names about the House Un-American Activities Committee. And on a Sunday, sitting in the audience was Charles Durning, Peter Falk, and Dom DeLuise. And Jack came running into my dressing room, and he went, "Now we got to do it for us, not for them. Don't get caught up." And I said, "Jack, we're always good. What are you worried about? What are you going to do? Shave my head and send me back to Nam? We're fine. They're our friends. I'm glad they're here." He goes, "You're right. You're right." So we went out and we had one of those magic performances. I don't know what causes it. Nobody does. But while we're bowing, Jack said, "We got to get the boys together and find out what the hell we did right tonight." So Tuesday we go to dinner. We had Monday and Tuesday off. And it was great stories about acting. And Charlie, very emotionally, he put his arm around me and he said, "All right, Dan, another 10 years you'll be an actor." I thought I won the Academy Award. And then Jack Klugman leans across the table, looks at the great Charles Durning and says, "Charlie, are you an actor yet?" Charles Durning leans over and puts his thumb and forefinger together and he says, "Jack, I'm getting damn close." And Peter Falk leaned over and went, "I think you're there, Charlie." So, Lombardi would have loved those guys.
Oh
yeah.
And he would have loved your performance of him. I think you've really done him justice, and maybe we'll see a resurgence again someday of it.
Yeah, well, he died at 57. I was too old when I did it, but I think it's been done in most of NFL cities, and I got a feeling, especially if Green Bay gets there, it's going to be done all over again. It's a good play.
It's a great play, and you're a great actor, and we thank you so much for joining us on this holiday edition. Dan Lauria joining us. At those Christmas tunes, I hear we got to go. But again, thank you so much, Troy. Happy holidays to you and your family. Dan.
All right. Thanks for coming to play.
Thanks for having us.
We'll be there, Dad. Just let us know.
Yeah, we'll be there. Happy holidays to everybody out there that supports the Geary Stein and Stevens Show. Again, you can watch us on your home TV. We're on Roku. And don't forget, reruns of the Wonder Years are on Hulu and Disney Plus because he likes to get those 13-cent checks every now and then. Right, Dan?
I got one for 2 cents the other day.
All right, everybody, take care. Happy holidays. And that's it for the Geary Stein and Stevens Show. We love you.
Take care.